Welcome to the NTEB Prophecy News Podcast with your host and Bible teacher, Jeffrey Greider. Rightly divided, dispensationally correct, and standing on the authority of the King James Holy Bible. This program is brought to you by NowTheEndBegins.com.
And good afternoon. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the NTEB Prophecy News Podcast. Today, we're talking about the vaccine from Moderna, and they are getting ready. They are right now in Washington, D.C., and they are petitioning the FDA for permission to proceed and release the first round of the COVID-19 vaccine. And they are happy about that. They are excited about that. So let's go to the Lord in prayer and ask for His blessing on today's program. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We thank you for all these that you've gathered, Lord, and all the people who will listen to it in the archives. And we just pray, Lord, that you would give us the truth of the end times that we find ourselves in and show us the path forward. And we do pray as a church family for Jeanette tomorrow, who's going to be having surgery. And we pray, Lord, that you would guide the doctors and guide the anesthesiologists and the nurses and give Jeanette courage and comfort to go through the operation, see her through it, Lord, and give her a witness everywhere that she goes. And we put her in your hands, Father God, and say, thy will be done. But we love her, Lord, and we know that you do as well. And we just pray for a good outcome and a good result, but most of all, that your will would be accomplished in Jeanette's life and that the surgery would go exactly how you want it to go, Lord. And we ask these things, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, today we are talking about the vaccine. On this episode of the NTEB Prophecy News Podcast, the COVID-1984 vaccine that we've been warning you about is set to be released by not one but two big pharma companies this month. Moderna is so far along that they're asking the FDA this morning for clearance to release it. What are the prophetical implications of the COVID vaccine? How close are we to implantable digital identification? And could this be the mark of the beast? We're going to answer all those questions, plus a bunch more you haven't even asked yet. We're going to show you how everything fits on the end times timeline. Want to have a little end times fun? Then try this. Go to Google and type in Bill Gates Moderna and see what pops up. You will have the USA Today people warning you of a conspiracy theory. You will have the people over at Comic News Snopes telling you that Bill Gates is not tied to Moderna. And even Reuters is weighing in, telling you that Bill Gates is not tied to Moderna. Well, that must be true, right? Well, now go to the Moderna website, and you'll find this when you get there. Where is it? In January 2016, we entered a Global Health Project Framework Agreement with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to advance mRNA-based development projects for various infectious diseases. So, even though Snopes, USA Today, Reuters, and everybody else wants you to believe that Moderna is not connected with Bill Gates, you can go to the Moderna website, and I'm going to put this into the chat room so you can see it for yourselves. But all you have to do is go to ModernaTX for Texas.com, and you'll find this article. Foundations Advancing mRNA Science and Research. And Bill Gates has given them so far over $20 million to work on the mRNA vaccine. Interesting little informational nugget about the mRNA vaccine. Never before in modern history has any mRNA vaccine been approved for use in human beings by the FDA. Now, they want you to believe that in a matter of 6 months, maybe even less, it was probably closer to 5 months, they want you to believe that in 5 months' time, this vaccine that they are rushing through at breakneck speed or Operation Warp Speed, They're rushing this thing through, and now they say today, Moderna has said that it is 94% effective in stopping the coronavirus, and this unproven, untested vaccine that has never been used, never been approved by the FDA, this is the very first one that's going to come out, and it's going to be ready sometime in the second or third week of December. That's 2 weeks from today. So take a listen to the folks at Fox News talking about, or do I not have that clip? I thought I had that clip. Hold on 1 second here. I don't see that clip. But Fox News today was talking about the release of this thing. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Take a listen. Fox News, Moderna to seek emergency authorization of coronavirus vaccine. It sounds scary. It sounds important. Emergency authorization. Take a listen.
Fox News alert. We have some big news this morning in the race for the coronavirus vaccine. The drug maker Moderna asking the FDA for emergency approval of its COVID-19 vaccine today. Here to react is Fox News medical contributor and author of that book right there, Make America Healthy Again, Dr. Nicole Saphier. Dr. Saphier, always good to see you. This is excellent news. Can you tell us more about it?
Yep, very exciting news this morning. Moderna has officially been going to file today their EUA from the FDA about their COVID-19 vaccine. They're reporting a 94% efficacy rate. But one of the more important things that they also said was that it was 100% effective in preventing severe illness, similar to the flu shot. So some people may get the flu vaccine and they still get the flu, but it does a great job in making sure that it is not the severe effects of the flu. And now it looks like Moderna is going to be doing the same thing with COVID-19, and that's just another way to keep people out of the hospital.
That's great. So the FDA is meeting on December 10th to talk about Pfizer. Will they also be discussing Moderna, or will that be a separate panel?
So it's going to be a separate panel. Right now, the FDA is reviewing all the information that Pfizer has submitted. And on December 10th, they're going to convene. And they're going to be doing a non-binding vote to see if it actually should get approved from the EUA or not. A couple of days before December 10th, we're going to have a good idea if it's going to be approved or not, as their staff report's going to come out. Also, one of the most important things about this process is they're going to be submitting the documents online. So it's available for public commentary. That is crucial to get rid of some of this some of the skepticism that's being present with the public right now. So it's really important that this process is transparent, which it's going to be.
Okay, I know the CDC is also going to meet this week to discuss who is going to get vaccinated first. We'll, of course, be reporting on that. I'm sure we'll have you back on to talk about that. All right, this is Dr. Celine Gounder. She is Biden's advisor. She is on his advisory board, his COVID advisory board. Listen to this, Nicole, and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
We fully expect that in about a week or two after Thanksgiving, we will see an increase in cases first. Then about a week or two later, you'll start to see an increase in hospitalizations. And then another week or two after that, you'll start to see deaths. And so unfortunately, that means that many people who celebrated with family, with friends over Thanksgiving will find themselves in the hospital, in ICUs over Christmas and New Year's.
Dr. Saphier, Dr. Birx even said, assume you have it if you traveled for Thanksgiving.
So that's right. So, Ainsley, you know, I've been saying now for a couple months that I feel like I should be a translator for Dr. Fauci and now Dr. Gounder, because although everything that she is saying is 100% true, we also have to make sure that we are not pushing the American people farther away from wanting to adhere to some of these recommendations. Dr. Fauci said last month that maybe we should cancel Christmas. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing possible. There are many safe ways to be together for Christmas. While I do agree that we had over 9 million Americans travel during the Thanksgiving time, that will undoubtedly result in a rise in cases, which will result in a rise in hospitalization and will also result in a rise of deaths. I think it's important to remind people the reason that we're doing this. We have uncontrolled spread of the virus throughout the country right now. And although the far majority of people will not end up in the hospital and will not die from this, this is still a very deadly virus. We have a few more months of this. We have Pfizer is likely going to produce 20 million vaccines for Americans by the end of 2020. Just give it a few more months. If you did travel over Thanksgiving break, I do recommend just assuming that you have the virus. I recommend assuming everyone has the virus right now. I think I've been saying that to the spring. Do what you can. Wear a mask when you need to. Wash your hands. If you traveled over the break, I would consider getting testing right now if you don't want to self-quarantine for 10 to 14 days. And just know there is a big light at the end of this tunnel.
Yes, Christmas is around the corner, the birth of our Savior, and then also these vaccines. It's great news. Thank you so much, Dr. Sapphire. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Ainsley.
There you go, the birth of our Savior, Christmas. How about mentioning his name? You're not going to hear that name. You're not even going to hear that name on fake Fox News. But did you hear what they had to say? That they're telling you how you need to react, and they're preparing you for this vaccine. And you cannot even begin to imagine the type of pressure, social pressure at first, that's going to be placed on you to take this vaccine. Almost everybody at this point has a story of walking into a place of business or a restaurant or a supermarket, not wearing a mask and being stared down by those people who were wearing a mask. Have you ever encountered that? Have you ever had dirty looks from people? Have you ever been shopping in your local supermarket and watched people freaking out when they saw somebody else not wearing a mask and going up to the manager and demanding that maskless people be given masks on the way into the place? I've seen that multiple times. I've actually stopped counting. I have seen that type of reaction so many times. So the first thing that you have to keep in mind is whenever this vaccine comes out, whether it's from Pfizer or Moderna or whoever this first round of vaccine comes from, the first line of pressure that you're going to feel is going to be social pressure. And then you're going to feel economic pressure as places like Qantas, and we told you about this last week, Qantas Airlines, one of the most respected airlines in the world, is right now drawing up plans to restrict international travel to those people who have received the COVID vaccine and can prove that they've received it. So those plans are already happening right now. Now, right before showtime, I was talking with my friend Tim over in Lake City, and he was asking about missionaries. How is this going to impact when missionaries have to travel to foreign countries, because that's where missionaries go? What's going to happen? You're going to have missionaries, and there's tens of thousands of Christian missionaries all over the world, and they're going to be told that if they want to return to the field, or if they're on the field and they want to return home, what's going to happen? They are going to be forced to take the COVID vaccine. So I want you to begin to see the level at which these things are operating on. And I want you to understand that the first couple rounds of vaccines, as dangerous for your body as they may be, they are going to not be nearly as dangerous as once everybody gets used to taking the vaccine, like the flu shot. And it's during that time period that they're going to be rolling out the really scary and really dangerous stuff. The New World Order, the global elites, the deep state, whatever you want to call these people, I like calling them the New World Order. But these people, they have the long game in mind. They're not looking to get something done immediately. They are very content with getting things done years and years and years of preparation. Sometimes it's multi-generational what they do. You have to remember that George Bush, on September 11th, 1991, stood up before Congress, and he proclaimed that America and the entire world was going to be under the New World Order that would be controlled by the United Nations. He said that on September 11th of 1991 in front of the Congress. Well, people forgot that he made that statement 6 months after he said it. And then years went by, and then a decade went by. And then what happened? The towers came down. The Patriot Act came out. And by 2004, Verichip had released the first human implantable microchip identification. And that's how fast it happened. But those things had been put in place for years ahead of time, decades ahead of time. So the New World Order is very, very, very happy to take their time, and the reason why they do that is because once the emergency has passed, everybody goes back to their business and they forget. The American public and the global public have a very, very short memory. You would think with all this information that we have and the internet and these all these publishers like Now the End Begins and other people who are constantly producing content, you would think that would make people more informed. And on one hand, it does. But on the other hand, it makes people less informed because there's no time to process things. You hear this incredible story, and then 6 hours later, you hear a story that tops that and tops that. And you forget, I forget. I mean, sometimes I go through my own archives and I'm like, wow, I forgot that I wrote about that last year or 2 years ago or 10 years ago. So Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 says, talking about the time that we live in right now. This is the time period that Daniel was looking at. Daniel 12, verse 4, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." Everybody has the magic box now. Billions and billions and billions of people have the magic box. What's the magic box? It has all the answers. You can pick up this magic box and you can tap it and you can ask it any question you want to ask it, and you will get the right answer in 99.9% of the cases. You'll also get a lot of junk that goes along with that. But if you have even the least amount of discernment, you have a magic box that you talk to, and it answers your question in real time. For example, let me show you how the magic box works for me. I type in something like COVID rates. Very simple, very nondescript. I'm not even saying what I want the rates of, whether it's America, Europe, Asia. I'm just simply typing in the two words COVID rates. And it immediately sends me a customized breakdown of, we live in St. Johns County, and within 1 second, I see St. Johns County has 8,727 cases with 96 fatalities. Florida has 993,000 with 18,499 fatalities. America has 13.4 million cases with 267,000 fatalities. That answer, and I didn't even tell it where I wanted to search, what type of information I was looking for. I just simply typed in COVID rates, and Google knew exactly what I was asking, what I wanted to see, and it gave me a breakdown of my town, my county, my state, and the country. And it delivered that information all in under 1 second. We all have these magic boxes. Whether it's a mobile device, a laptop, a tablet, a pad, a mobile phone, whatever it is, you are connected to the Mark of the Beast world system known as the Internet. That's what the Internet is, and I have believed that since it was released to the public 26 years ago. And nothing has happened in the last 26 years that would make me think otherwise. So, everybody around the world, in light of Daniel 12:24, knowledge shall be increased and many people shall run to and fro. That has been absolutely 100% fulfilled. Everybody has the magic box. Everybody speaks to it. Alexa, tell me COVID rates. Hey, Google, right? They have us talking to computers. Why do you think that Amazon has given it a female name? Why do you think that Microsoft gives it a female name? Everything is all about the cult of the feminine. That's why the Roman Catholic Church worships the Virgin Mary, and they give Jesus second place. What you'll find in the end times, it is the cult of the feminine. Now, I want to play this clip, and I think it's amazingly appropriate for what we're talking about today. Many of you may recall comedian George Carlin. He was a social comedian, and he had his claim to fame was humorous but true, and a lot of the times very accurate social commentary. Unfortunately, we can't play a lot of his clips because he used a lot of profanity. Well, I took my time with this clip and I edited out his profanity, and I want you to listen to George Carlin warning about exactly what's going on in 2020, but this is probably from 1984, 1985. Remember, we were talking about how the New World Order has a long game in view. They're not looking to get things done immediately. And even when they roll out this vaccine, round number 1, round number 2, they are going to step you into it slowly. They are going to throw a ton of information at you. They are going to bamboozle you. And then you're just going to give up and turn away because it's too confusing. And who has time to figure all that stuff out? Well, we have time to figure all that stuff out. That's why God has placed us here where he's placed us on the front lines of the end times. And every year, tens of millions of people come to Now the End Begins to get this information. And we're very, very happy to give it to you. So take a listen to George Carlin, social comedian from the 1980s, warning about government control of infectious viruses. Take a listen to this.
Because that's what Americans do now. They're always willing to trade away a little of their freedom in exchange for the feeling, the illusion of security. What we have now is a completely neurotic population obsessed with security and safety and crime and drugs and cleanliness and hygiene and germs. There's another thing. Germs. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly running stories about all the latest infections, salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, and Americans they panic easily, so now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol. It's true. It's true. It's true. Well, they don't want you to get an infection. And you can see their point. Wouldn't want some guy to go to hell and be sick. It would take a lot of the sportsmanship out of the whole execution. Fear of germs, why these... Besides, what do you think you have an immune system for? It's for killing germs. But it needs practice. It needs germs to practice on. So listen. If you kill all the germs around you and live a completely sterile life, then when germs do come along, you're not going to be prepared. And never mind ordinary germs, what are you going to do when some super virus comes along that turns your vital organs into liquid? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you're going to deserve it because you're fucking weak and you got a fucking weak immune system. Now, let me tell you a true story about immunization, okay? When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage, okay? We swam in raw sewage, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer. We were tempered in raw shit. And you know something? In spite of all that so-called risky behavior, I never get infections. I don't get them. I don't get colds. I don't get flu. I don't get headaches. I don't get upset stomachs. And you know why? Because I got a good, strong immune system, and it gets a lot of practice.
So there you have George Carlin from the 1980s talking about people being unprepared. And this was back in the 1980s, for those of you who remember the 1980s. Do you remember when antibacterial products got very, very popular? And oh man, everybody was using antibacterial soap and antibacterial hand creams and hand lotions, and it killed the germs for a while, but then it created a new race of superbacteria, which is able to counteract the antibacterial products. So George Carlin is very, very correct when he says that your immune system needs to be exposed to pathogens in order to learn how to fight against those pathogens. So you don't need to be afraid of the flu. If you're taking care of your immune system, if you're doing what you can to strengthen it. Phyllis in the chat room was asking me earlier, she said that it seems that I have a lot of energy, and God has absolutely blessed me with that, and I've always been very strong and always been filled with a lot of energy. And at the same time, every single day I drink a quart of fresh-made vegetable juice. I take vitamin C, zinc, I take CoQ10, I take magnesium and potassium, I take all sorts of different things and minerals and herbs to make sure that my body stays strong. I've never had a flu shot. I never will take a flu shot. It doesn't matter how old I get. I'm still in my 50s right now, but even when I get into my 70s and 80s, now I say that with a smile on my face because at the rate that things are going, I'm expecting the pre-tribulation rapture of the church sometime in spring of 2021. I'm not predicting it. I'm not calling for it, but me personally, I'm expecting it. And we'll see what happens. And but I've been expecting it every day for almost 30 years now. But this spring is going to have special significance in light of how 2020 has been. So George Carlin is telling you that when you don't take care of your immune system and you're not exposed to any type of germs at all, when the germs come, it's very overwhelming, and it kills you. That's what happens. You remember the story of when the Europeans first came to this continent, and they were trading with the Indians, Native Americans, and they were trading blankets that had chickenpox on it, and the Native Americans had never been exposed to chickenpox, and they caught it and they died. But then they got used to it, and then it didn't kill them. So your immune system has to be exposed to pathogens in order for it to be able to fight these pathogens off. As George Carlin said, your immune system needs practice. And I'll never take a flu shot. I've never had a flu shot, and I'm never going to take the COVID vaccine. I never will. And that's something that you're going to have to make that decision for yourself. I can't make that for you. All I can do is tell you what I find when I do the research. Now, I said at the start of this program, when I Googled Bill Gates and Moderna, I found a bunch of nonsense from the major outlets like Reuters and USA Today and MSNBC and CNN and the comic news people like Snopes, right? But it was funny. They were all saying exactly the same thing. They were saying that it was just nothing but ridiculous conspiracy theory until you go to the Moderna website and you find that going back to 2016, Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation formed an alliance, and they formed a partnership with Moderna Therapeutics. And so they have been working with them and giving them tens of millions of dollars over the last 4 years. And now, in an amazing coincidence, Moderna is the first company to get ready to release a vaccine. The same company that Bill Gates gave $20 million to 4 years ago. Not only that, but when you go to the partnership page on modernatx.com, you find out that not only are they partners with the Gates Foundation, they are also partners with DARPA. And DARPA is the scary advanced research arm of the Pentagon. And they're working on things like brain chips and biometric implantable identifications and robot armies and all sorts of stuff. That's what DARPA does. Well, ask yourself this question. Why is DARPA, which is a company that is largely concerned with technology for defense, why is DARPA partnering with Moderna, the same company that Bill Gates is giving tens of millions of dollars to? Well, back about 7 months ago, Bill Gates was on a Chinese program where he was asked, I guess in Chinese, but fortunately for us, he answered in English. This is from 7 months ago. Bill Gates was on a Chinese program, and they were asking him about vaccine conspiracy theories. Let's take a listen to what Bill Gates said 7 months ago on Chinese television. Take a listen.
我注意到在美国也会有一些网友甚至攻击您，说病毒是从您疫苗的这个研制过程中出来的。您在用什么样的心态面对这种声音？
I'd say it's an ironic if you take somebody who's doing their best to get the world ready and, putting, in my case, billions of dollars into these tools for infectious diseases and really trying to solve broadly infectious diseases, including those that can cause pandemics. But that, we're in a crazy situation, so there's going to be crazy rumors. I hope, whether it's individuals or countries, that in some ways this shows us how interdependent we are. That to stop a global pandemic, we need to find whoever's the best, whatever the best vaccine construct are, the best drugs, and we need to make it without just focusing on one country. We need to make it for the entire world, including for countries that don't have the resources to pay for vaccine research or vaccine factories. They're actually, in many ways, should be the priority for what we do. So, there's lots of attacks out there. In general, people have been very positive.
So there you have multi-billionaire Bill Gates whining about the fact that people push back on his nonsense, and they call him out for what a liar he is, and talking about these various conspiracy theories about vaccines and viruses. And yet, here we are with Moderna, and we find out through... It only took me, I would say, about 14 or 15 seconds to get the right answer, to get to modernatx.com. And when you go there, you find out that they are very, very much in bed with the military-industrial complex, which... Are we surprised about that? I don't think we're surprised about that. But that's where these people are, and these are the things that they're working on. But even I was a tad surprised when I saw on their collaborators page, and you can see it if you're not in the chat room, just go to modernatx.com/about us and go to the strategic collaborators page, and you will see something that even surprised me. You will see that Moderna is a collaborator with DARPA. Oh man. And you wonder where conspiracy theories come from. This is where they come from. Now, we have reported over the years on activity at DARPA. And let me just read for you a couple headlines from our archive with stories that we've told you about DARPA. Let's find some recent ones. Let's see here. Super secret government agency DARPA needs to make an immediate purchase of a massive underground lair by the end of the day today. That was August 28th of 2019, where they put out a RFP, request for proposal, for purchase, and they needed to have a massive piece of property on the same day. And that's what they were looking for. U.S. Pentagon and DARPA are conducting wide area surveillance tests using experimental high-altitude balloons across 6 Midwestern states. That was also from 2019. Here we are. DARPA at the Pentagon is working to create transhumanistic neural interface. The same thing that Elon Musk is working on. Elon Musk is now the world's second richest man. Elon Musk is in a position to make all of his end times fantasies come true. DARPA at the Pentagon working to create transhumanistic neural interface to connect soldiers' brains to computer systems. Well, that's pretty interesting. Let's find a couple more just for fun. DARPA begins experiments to change people's behaviors by implanting microchips in their brain. And they've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years. We told you DARPA reveals $65 million Matrix program to turn soldiers' brains into a computer. That's what DARPA is working on. And we have dozens and dozens and dozens of more articles on DARPA. So when you have time, just go to nowthenbegins.com and go to our fancy new search feature. Type in the word DARPA, D-A-R-P-A, and you'll see what comes up. But when you start to see, and I think you're getting a little bit of a flavor of what I'm talking about, when you start to see everything that DARPA's working on, and then you realize that the vaccine that is requesting regulatory approval today from Moderna, funded by Bill Gates, well, this is what we've been telling you the whole time. This is what we've been showing you. Now the End Begins has almost 8,400 articles and stories and features related to the end times. And there's almost no subject that you can think of that we haven't talked about at some point. So for the last 10 years, we've been warning you, we've been showing you, we've been instructing you, we've been teaching you about what all the different end times players are up to and all the different things that they're working on. Now, this one, I want you to listen to this clip. It's from a man by the name of Spiro, and his website is called Activist Post. And there's a lot of really good alternative news sites out there. You can go to raptureready.com, of course. You can go to Activist Post. You can go to Zero Hedge. And this guy, Spiro, I really like the things that he chooses to talk about, and he really digs deep and gets some pretty good stuff. So I want you to listen to Spiro from Activist Post, and he's talking about the United Nations announcement of biometric digital ID wallet last week. Take a listen to Spiro. UN announces biometric digital ID wallet. It's fascinating and a little bit scary. Take a listen.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Spiro. Thanks for tuning in. There's a lot going on and a lot to cover, but in this report, I'd like to specifically focus on one of the major changes coming our way as we transition into the Great Reset and the new digitalized system of control, and that is digital IDs, a topic we have covered here on the show previously. I'll leave links for some in-depth reports on that regarding the UN's work with the Gates Foundation and ID 2020, among many others, to establish a digital identity and birth registration for everyone on the planet under Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, which is part of the UN's 2030 agenda. But for now, I want to focus on this news that just came out here within the past couple days. The International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a specialized agency under the United Nations, has announced they are one step closer to bringing digital identity-based travel to a reality, as they have endorsed specifications for the first digital travel credentials. Now, additionally, the United Nations just announced that they are rolling out its own biometric digital identity wallet. As you can see here on Biometric Update, the UN Digital Solutions Center is a pilot project for the World Food Program, which is a United Nations program, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the United Nations International Computing Center, which I have reported on previously, that was very instrumental in the development and implementation and rollout of 5G almost a decade ago. So this particular UN biometric digital wallet is intended for UN employees, and it can be used for data related to human resources, medical status, i.e., vaccine status, travel, there's your health passport, payroll, and pensions. It's going to be hooked up to your financials. Now, this can also be used for onboarding new employees or helping transition those who are leaving or retiring away from the organization. Now, here is a quick promo video.
Digital transformation is changing the way we manage our data, our information, our interactions, and our identities online. The United Nations is ready to digitally transform how it deals with identity, with a system to streamline information sharing, daily workflows, access to platforms and buildings, operating across agencies, by providing its personnel with a universal system-wide identity solution. Introducing the UN Digital ID, a unique and digital identity for UN personnel from the day you join to the day you part. All of your personal, HR, medical, travel, security, payroll, and pension data in the palm of your hand, giving you full control on what you share and with whom. With blockchain and biometrics, the UN Digital ID makes verification efficient, secure, transparent, immutable, portable, and universal. It's been piloted by different agencies and the UN Pension Fund, where they've replaced current manual processes with certainty for who and where pension recipients say they are at any given time. Imagine a regional field officer has just joined the UN. She uses the mobile app to obtain a digital wallet, stored securely in her smartphone and only accessible to her with biometrics. Even better than a physical wallet, she can store all her credentials issued by any UN organization in her digital wallet. She has immediate access to course certificates, travel clearances from UNDSS, medical records from allergies to vaccinations, also making any transfer to another organization a breeze. As innovation transforms the world, we can improve the way we manage our identities online. UN Digital IDs, a building block for digital cooperation, unlocking the promise of the SDGs.
I hope you see where this is going. Every aspect of our lives will be centrally digitalized using biometrics, AI, 5G, and in many cases, blockchain. And when you hear the so-called stakeholders, such as the United Nations, or the central banks or governments, or the World Economic Forum, who just blocked me on Twitter the other day, reference the private sector, they are talking about tech companies, fintech companies like Ripple, or foundations like IOTA, who are currently working on digital IDs, distributed ledger technology, cryptocurrencies, smart cities, and the Internet of Things, just to name a few. This is the new digital system of control the social engineers are referring to when they talk about the Great Reset, along with the social controls via United Nations Agenda 21 and the merger of man and machine via the World Economic Forum's Fourth Industrial Revolution, which Musk's brain chip, Neuralink, fits into nicely, doesn't it? Now, all of these pieces of the puzzle are hiding out there in plain sight. And of course, this new system is being ushered in and justified by the current manufactured crisis. This is classic problem reaction solution in real time. And it's not just happening in some far-off land halfway around the world, and you have years before it will affect you. This is the rollout/implementation phase. Example, just today, Acquaint, a leading global provider of identity verification solutions, announced today that it has become an official member of the Digital ID and Authentication Council of Canada. And when you look at their partners, it's crypto exchanges, credit card companies, banks, and what are they interested in? Well, it says right here, document authentication, behavior data, biometric verification, liveliness detection, transactions, your personal data, digital footprint. And what industries are they working in? Well, currently they're working in retail, telecom, health, finance, banking, transportation/travel, government, and border controls. All of these aspects will be part of your digital identity, including your credit and possibly social credit scores. Just today, they announced a partnership with Canada's government. So this is moving forward day by day.
So there you have Spiro from Activist Post, and he's telling you that these things are not in the future. Everything that Spiro just told you in that clip that he played for you was from a video that was created by the United Nations. So these things are not going to happen in the near future. They are happening right now. And that's the thing that you need to wrap your head around. Now, do you know the difference between a tidal wave and a tsunami? Have you ever thought about what the difference between a tidal wave and a tsunami might be? They both cause tremendous damage. But one of the main differences between a tidal wave and a tsunami is that a tidal wave is very, very high, and it broadcasts its presence from a long way off. And it's relatively easy to spot a tidal wave. Now, if you see the tidal wave coming and you don't do anything, the tidal wave is going to wipe everything out. My grandfather used to tell me back in the 1930s there was a tidal wave in Ocean City, New Jersey, and it wiped out the entire boardwalk, and it wiped out everything like a block and a half back from the ocean, and it was really very damaging. But a tsunami does everything that the tidal wave can do and more. But the real danger with the tsunami is it's very, very hard to see. It is not a high wave. It is a low wave. And you really don't see the tsunami until it's just about to make impact where you are. And I'm sure that you've gone to YouTube and watched those videos. And it shows everybody, they're on the beach and they're playing volleyball and they're having a good time. And we can see from the bird's eye view, we can see the tsunami forming, and you're screaming at the video screen, run, run, run. And the people are just, they're putting on suntan lotion. They're playing volleyball. They're walking their dog. And then when the tsunami is about 100 feet away, they finally see it. They would have seen a tidal wave long before that. But by the time the people on the beach, and I've seen these videos, by the time the people on the beach are aware of the fact that a tsunami is about 50 yards away from them, you see them running, and the majority of those people are not able to run to safety because they waited too long to take action when the tsunami was coming. Now, I don't want you to think of what's happening now in 2020 with the digital identification and the vaccines and all this different stuff and immunity passports and travel restrictions and all these different things. I don't want you to think of what's happening now as a tidal wave. I want you to rightly understand that what we're seeing now is a tsunami. And a tsunami is much harder to spot than a tidal wave. Now, if they were just to come out and say, we're going to give you this vaccine and we're going to connect a digital identification to it, and they were going to do that in round one, everybody would be wide awake and the vast majority of people would refuse to take it. But they're very smart. They're not looking to give you a tidal wave. They're looking to bring in a tsunami. The low profile, hard to spot, hard to recognize. You don't see it. If you're not paying attention, you don't see it until it's 50 yards away from you. And then you are running like a crazy person when the tsunami is about to hit you. But at that point, it's too late. So, listen to what I'm about to tell you right now, and this is how you can avoid the tsunami that is coming for you. And I understand, look, we live in the church age, right? We rightly divide the scriptures. We rightly divide and we're dispensationally accurate, and we understand that the church is not going to spend 1 minute in the time of Jacob's trouble or the great tribulation at the second half of Jacob's trouble. I'm not advocating for that at all. I understand that the pre-tribulation rapture is going to take us out of here before the mark of the beast. We will not see the literal, actual mark of the beast. The church will not see that. We will not be faced with it. We will not be exposed to it. However, what we are being exposed to is all of the preparation work that is going to lead up to the mark of the beast. I told you in the first half hour that when I finally understood back in 1994, when my younger brother, he came home from the military, he was in the Marine Corps, and he was all excited. He got certified as a Microsoft NetWare engineer, and he came home, and I didn't even own a personal computer. And he said to me, he said, dude, you got to check this out. I got to show you something really, really cool. And he showed me the internet. And I was not technologically savvy at all. I didn't own a computer. I didn't know how to copy and paste. I didn't know anything about the computer. The very first website that I ever saw, it was a King James only, of course, website from a brother out in Hawaii. I think his name was Brandon. I don't even know if he still has his site in operation. This is 26 years ago. But the very first website that I ever went to was a King James website. And then I started to kind of, surf around in the very, very early days of the public internet. And in a very short period of time, about 10 minutes, the Holy Spirit showed me that the internet, is the thing that is going to connect the entire world together. That was 26 years ago, almost 27 years ago. Now ask yourself, in the last 26 years, has the internet begun to function a lot like the mark of the beast? When I want to send money to somebody, I go to my bank account or I go to PayPal, I type in a code, it gives me access, and I can send money to a friend, I can pay somebody for a service, I can check my banking account, I can go to Amazon, I can buy something, and those products will just magically show up at my front door a couple of days later. And the internet is absolutely the number one place where people buy and sell stuff. Now, the mark of the beast is a mark which controls all buying and all selling. The internet is the very first global structure that legitimately connected the entire world together. I told you that the New World Order has a long game. They don't have a short game. We are coming up on 27 years of the public internet. And with each passing year, with each passing decade, it gets larger and larger and larger until this point, 26 and a half years later, the world could not really function without the internet. And why? Because everybody has made the switch to get online. Every single business in the world has reconfigured how they do business, how they keep records, how they pay people, how they send money, how they receive money. The entire world over the last 26 years has gotten on board with the internet. It is the global web that connects the entire world. Now, what does that have to do with vaccines and Moderna and Bill Gates and DARPA? Well, it has everything to do with that, because now what we have is we have a one world system, not a system that's coming, the system that's here. You're listening to this very program on the one world mark of the beast system. That's what the internet is. So every time that we broadcast these programs, like we said last night, we are plundering enemy territory. We are pulling out lost souls and telling them how to get saved. And we are using the devil's machinery to broadcast our programs. That's how far we've come in 26 years. Now, with each passing year and each passing decade, technology, it's called Moore's Law. Moores law. And Moore's Law states, and let me just pull it up so I am not misquoting it at all. Moore's Law states that, it says here, is the observation that the number of transistors in a dense integrated circuit doubles about every 2 years. Okay? Now, Moore's Law was in effect for nearly half a century. Moore's Law is no longer being followed because the amount of change that is happening right now is much more than what Moore's Law said would be the average 2-year increase in technology as it relates to transistors on a circuit board. We are living in a tremendous time of technological explosion. Daniel 12:4 says, in the time of the end, many people shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. If I want to travel somewhere, I can get on a plane and I can physically go there. But I can just go to my 27-inch computer screen and I can pull up a video, say, from Sergio and Rhoda on one of their great Israel videos. And I can look at it on the big screen, or I can cast it to my flat screen, my 65-inch flat screen that I have up on the wall here in the Now the End Begins studios. And I can take a virtual tour of just about anywhere I want to go. And that's what Daniel 12:4 is really talking about. Not just physical travel, but cyber travel. And what was one of the main things that took place in 2020? After the lockdown, what happened? Everybody is getting on Zoom meetings, and everybody is having virtual work and virtual office. Everybody is traveling to the meeting, but nobody is leaving their house. Do you see what Daniel was really, really talking about? And now we have a situation where people can travel without going anywhere. And they can conduct meetings, they can buy, they can sell. It's virtual, but it's real. It's actual. It's literal. These meetings are really millions of meetings every single day through things like Zoom and Skype. It's happening every single day around the world. And this is exactly what Daniel was talking about in the time of the end. Knowledge shall be increased, and many people shall run to and fro. Okay, so this is where we find ourselves, and this is what you need to know about the vaccines that are coming out right now. The mRNA vaccine has never been released to the public for any vaccine, for any illness, for any disease. And one of the reasons why they've never released the mRNA vaccine is because of the unpredictable nature of how it interacts with your DNA. The old-fashioned vaccines were what they called the live vaccine, and it put a tiny little bit of, say, the flu into the vaccine, along with formaldehyde and aborted baby parts and mercury and thimerosal and propylene glycol. If you've ever watched your radiator overheat on a summer day and you've seen all that blue-green liquid shooting out of your radiator, that's propylene glycol, and that's what you find in vaccines. And this is one of the many reasons why we say vaccines are no good. This is why I've never vaccinated my children. This is why I don't ever take a flu shot. This is why I was sick and I had surgeries, and I was in a wheelchair for 2.5 years when I was a child, and I got every round of vaccines. I still have this scar on my left arm, that little daisy-shaped group of circles, which is how they did it back when I got it in the early 1960s. And I was very, very sick as a child. I constantly had bronchitis and colds and flus. I had pyloric stenosis. I had all sorts of stuff. And right from the get-go, I was not a healthy child, and the vaccines made it much, much, much worse. Now, so the old-fashioned vaccines that are what they call the live vaccines, they are very dangerous. They are absolutely very dangerous. But these new vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, they take the danger to a whole new level. And instead of exposing your body to a live sample of the pathogen, the mRNA vaccine rewires your DNA in their attempt to deal with it. And so they've never released the mRNA vaccine because they don't know how it is going to react long term. And this is one of the problems. This is why they have never had one of these vaccines being released. So when you've never had a vaccine being released, what do you need to, if you want to get this vaccine out, and it's always given you problems, you need to have some sort of global catastrophe. You need to have some sort of global crisis to get everybody all terrified so that they're willing to not think about the risk and just take the vaccine. Now, I want you to listen to this from sciencemagazine.org. sciencemagazine.org published November 27th of 2020. And I'm going to put the link into the chat room, but if you're not in the chat room, you need to go to sciencemag.org, and the name of the article is called The Public Needs to Prepare for Vaccine Side Effects. And let me just read a little bit of this article to you. This summer, computational biologist Luke Hutchison volunteered for a trial of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. But after the second injection, his arm swelled up to the size of a goose egg. Hutchinson says he can't be sure he got the vaccine and not a placebo, but within a few hours, Hutchinson, who was healthy and 43 years old, was beset by bone and muscle aches with this is in Celsius, so let me convert his fever into Fahrenheit, 102.2 fever, and he had bone and muscle aches, and he started shaking. He said, I had cold and hot rushes. I was sitting by the telephone all night long. Should I call 911? Hutchinson said his symptoms resolved after 12 hours, but he said, nobody prepared me for the severity of this. Now, this is sciencemagazine.org in the UK because they're using Celsius, and they are warning people specifically about the Moderna vaccine and the incredible side effects that come with it. So, let's just pause from that article just for a second, and I want to remind you of something that we published last week, and we told you this. Doctors now warning that the coming COVID vaccine will, quote, this is the doctor, put you down, end quote. For at least 1 or 2 days, the side effects are so bad, and the same doctor says, but you need to get over that, and you need to take this vaccine anyway. So, what they're doing, and this is one reason why they keep you in a constant state of fear and a constant state of terror, because they want your fear to be the driving reason behind the decisions that you make as to whether or not you're going to take the vaccine. So what do? They get you afraid. Have you ever seen those scenes in a movie where somebody puts a gun to somebody else's head and then they start screaming at them, now you do what I'm telling you to do. And the person doesn't really want to do it, but they have this person screaming at them. They have a gun stuck to their head, and now fear begins to take over. So the person winds up doing what the crazy gunman wants them to do. not because they think it's a good idea or not even because they want to do it, but because they're afraid. And now you know why they have, and again, remember the long game. If there's one current theme that you take away from today's program, it's the term long game. And I want you to, every time you look at a news story, every time you see a breaking update or anything on any level from the vaccine and the identification and all that stuff, I want you to constantly remind yourself that they're going for the long game. They're not going to ram this down your throat overnight. And if this Moderna vaccine becomes available by the end of December, which is in only about 3 weeks from today, it's going to be bad, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as it's going to be when you get to phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4. And by that time, you've already given over your resistance. You've already agreed to do what they're telling you to do. And now there's no chance. And it's at that moment that the long game of the New World Order is going to accomplish the purpose that they do these things in the way that they do these things. So getting back to this article from sciencemag.org, they said this, the public should be better prepared because a subset of people are going to face intense side effects, and it's called reactogenicity from Moderna's vaccine. And health experts, they largely agree with this, okay? Someone needs to address the elephant. What about vaccine reactogenicity? There is the perception that when you receive this, it is going to give you they're calling it transient side effects. But there is definitely going to be a class of people that these side effects are not going to transition out of. And there are people who are going to be dying from these vaccines, even the Moderna vaccine. I worked for 10 years in big pharma here in America. I won't name the name of the companies, but I worked for 2 or 3 of America's largest pharmaceutical companies. I can recall being in a meeting with one of the biggest ones, and they had a medicine, and I forget what it was for, but they had spent $400 million to develop this medicine, and when they tested it in the clinical trials, every single person, just like from that movie, The Fugitive, every single person in the clinical trials developed a liver reaction, and the vast majority of those people did not live through the clinical trials. Now, you would think that seeing that the medicine just about killed every single one of the people in the clinical trials, you would think that this pharmaceutical company would immediately pull this drug. Now, I sat in the meeting where the CEO of that company, on speakerphone, he instructed all of us to find a new use for this drug, and that they were not going to allow $400 million to go down the drain. Now, that is not something that I read about. That is not something that I saw on the internet. I sat in that meeting and I heard that CEO on the speakerphone tell this group of researchers, I was the marketing guy, but I heard this CEO of one of America's biggest big pharma companies, and he said, I don't care how many people died, find a new use for that drug. And guess what? We did. And more people died. And that story has repeated itself over big pharma. That's not the type of stories that they're going to release to the public. They're always going to massage those things and turn those things around. But when you sit on the inside, as I did, and you know what? Now I see why God steered my career in that way, and why God, because I always found it odd. I never finished college, and people told me that I didn't have a degree, so I could never work for a big corporation because they required degrees. But when the internet got popular, God gave me a talent for making web pages, and then all of a sudden I could work anywhere I wanted to work. And I just simply wound up at this big pharmaceutical company because they were hiring and they were paying a 6-figure salary, and it was a great job to have. But I didn't stay there for a long time because I couldn't function in an environment like that where people's health was being so much put at risk by these medicines that were untested and unproven. And in the case of what I'm talking about, we had clinical results showing that this drug fried the livers of the people taking it, and they didn't pull the drug. They just simply said, find another disease to use it on. And I left the company shortly after that. But the point of what I'm saying is that Big Pharma is a blessing and a curse on a regular basis. They provide life-saving drugs, absolutely. But just as much as they provide drugs that will save your life, they provide drugs that will end your life. And a case in point, and this goes back to Anthony Fauci, back in the late 1980s, my older brother Bob, he was diagnosed with HIV, and they put him on a drug called AZT. And AZT was a failed chemotherapy from the 1950s that they recycled, and the CDC issued protocols that people suffering from HIV/AIDS should immediately be given high doses of AZT to knock the virus out. They even put it on the cover of Time magazine that this was the wonder drug that they were counting on. Well, this wonder drug killed my brother because the side effects of this drug were so severe that he developed pneumonia within the first 2 weeks of taking this drug. He wasn't sick. He didn't have pneumonia. He developed pneumonia within 14 days after taking AZT, and his official cause of death was not HIV. His official cause of death was not AIDS. His official cause of death on his death certificate was a heart attack and liver failure. Why? Because AZT fried his liver, and AZT gave him pneumonia because it lowered his immune system to such a strong degree, and it gave him a heart attack. So, this is what you're dealing with when you're dealing with pharmaceutical companies on a regular basis. I'm talking the entire 20th century and the first 20 years of the 21st century. These are the challenges that you have when you're dealing with big pharma on a regular basis. Now, add to that the end times component of the mark of the beast, of the one world system, of the new world order, of the human implantable microchip, and all these different things. And now, where does Big Pharma take you? Big Pharma takes you exactly to where Revelation chapter 13 says that you're going to go. So, right now, we are seeing a lost world preparing to receive Antichrist. That is not happening in the future. That is happening right now and has been happening in an active phase for the vast majority of 2020 so far. 2021 is going to be even worse. Okay? If you've been waiting to get past this year and you say to yourself, I only got another couple of weeks and 2020 is going to be over, you better buckle up, because 2020 has been preparation for what's coming. 2021 is going to be the real year where they're going to be ramming this stuff down our throats, okay? And that's why I am anticipating on a personal level. Now, you can think what you want to think, and I hope that God gives you a lot of insight when you have your devotional time and your Bible study time, and I hope that God greatly blesses your insight with regards to end times Bible prophecy. But when I read the Bible and I pray about it, God tells me, buckle up, because we're getting ready to fly on Flight 777. That's what God tells me personally. I am not predicting anything. I am not setting any dates. I am not calling for anything. I am just simply saying that what I feel in my spirit has been amazingly accurate this entire year. I felt in my spirit back in 2016 that Donald Trump would win in a landslide, and I wrote about that, and he won in a landslide. So I have gotten fairly comfortable with when my spirit, through prayer and Bible study, when my born-again spirit begins telling me things and is telling me to prepare for things, I listen to it. And my spirit, when I study the Bible, is telling me that it's just about time now. And so, look, I'm prepared to be here for the next 50 years on the front lines as long as it takes. I have a long game in mind as well. But I also have a short game in mind, because I know that, look, the book of Habakkuk says this. And if you want a really good verse, a really short verse, for those of you who have trouble memorizing verses, but if you want to memorize a really good verse that you can repeat to yourself as often as necessary to remind yourself of the times that we're living in, let me give you Habakkuk 1:5 in your King James Bibles. Habakkuk 1:5 says, Behold ye among the heathen, and regard, and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days which you will not believe, though it be told you. And Habakkuk is saying that when these things begin to come to pass, you will already have been told that they are coming to pass, and you will not believe it. And that's the time period that we find ourselves in. How exciting is it? You go all the way back to the 1970s, and you got Hal Lindsey writing a book called Late Great Planet Earth. And then all through the 80s, all through the 90s, and all through the early 2000s, you have an absolute torrent of end times movies, books, songs, music, programs, Bible studies. You have, for the last 40 years, you have had an endless array of literature and movies and TV shows that have been telling you that something is coming, something is coming, something is coming. Well, I am telling you right now, it is here. It is here right here, and it is here right now. That's exactly where we are. And the choice that you're going to have to make is you're going to have to get comfortable with the idea that you have lived long enough to find yourself in the end times. That's where you are right here, right now. When they wrote the Left Behind series, when they wrote that, there was 13 different installments of that Left Behind series. And I read every single one of those books twice. That's how much of now, I wasn't reading those books for Bible doctrine. If I want to read a book about Bible doctrine, I will simply open up my King James Bible, and I'm not going to trust end times novels to teach me about Bible doctrine, and you shouldn't either. You should know what you know because you study your King James Bibles on a regular basis. But I read all 13 installments twice because it was thrilling to think about what it would be like to live long enough. Look, I don't want to see myself in the tribulation. I loved the first book and the first movie talking about the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. That was the main reason why I read it. But when I began to read the rest of the books, and it was thrilling to see how Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye had decided that they were going, this was their depiction of it, and this is what they said was happening. And it was thrilling to me. But here we are in 2020. Remember, I told you about the long game. I told you that these people are very content to wait decades. Back in 1999, there was a movie called The Matrix. Take a listen to this scene between Morpheus and Neo talking about the truth.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. Do you believe in fate, Neo?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life.
I know exactly what you mean. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you...
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. That's what Morpheus said to Neo back in 1999. He said that 21 years ago. And here we are in 2020, and we are seeing the Matrix coming to life. We are seeing global lockdowns, the crashing of global economies. We are seeing Pope Francis, who is supposed to be the spiritual leader of the Roman Catholic Church, but how is he operating? Well, he's operating more like a king. And why is Pope Francis operating like a king? Because Revelation 18 says he is a king. Revelation 17 says he's a spiritual ruler. Revelation 18 says that he interacts with kings, and he's a political animal. We told you last week that Pope Francis gave a private meeting to the delegation from the National Basketball Association regarding Black Lives Matter and social justice. And here you see Pope Francis, like the political leader that he is, and he's holding court, and he is listening to what these people have to say, and he is shaping the international dialogue about social justice. Social justice is one of the components that will be used in the New World Order. This perceived sense of social justice and making everybody equal and making everybody start the same and end the same. When I was in school, we called that communism, Marxism, and socialism. But here in 2020, those things have suddenly become good things. And that's where everything is headed. If you follow Pope Francis on his Twitter feed, if you're on Twitter, I highly recommend that you follow Pope Francis, and you will see on a near daily basis he is offering guidance as to whether or not you should take the vaccine. And he absolutely thinks that you should take this vaccine. And in fact, if you don't take the vaccine, he has some very harsh words for you. So we are seeing it absolutely from every possible angle. We're seeing it socially, economically, spiritually, religiously, politically. The Matrix is coming after every single one of us, and you and I, who are slated to be taken out of here on Flight 777 on Titus 213 Airlines, don't think for a second that you're not going to get a little dirt on your white tennis shoes on the way out, because you absolutely will. All right? We are not getting out of here scar-free and spot-free. We are going to catch a little bit of the flack on our way up and out of here. The official magazine of the Jesuits, called America Magazine, it's kind of ironic that the Jesuits would call their magazine America, but they do that. Here's an article dated September 21st of 2020 from Vatican City. As countries around the world scramble to find a vaccine for COVID-19, Pope Francis again called for an ethical distribution of the vaccine to everyone, especially those who are struggling financially. So Pope Francis wants everybody to have the vaccine. So what are you going to do when you open your eyes in January of 2020 and you are being told on every level that you need to take this vaccine? Now, if you're like me, you'll start off strong. You'll say, no, I'm not going to take it. But then they're going to say, well, you can't fly on international flights without the vaccine. And then they will tell you you can't fly on domestic flights without the vaccine. Then they'll tell you that you can't go to restaurants and supermarkets without the vaccine. And everybody is going to tell you exactly the same thing. What are you going to do? It's going to come at a cost. It's going to come at a big cost. And this is not one day, someday. This is 2021. And you mark my words, they are going to say, if you want to be part of society, you need to take this vaccine. Now, any idiot can tell you that if they're going to have mandatory mask wearing, and they make you wear a mask, and they're going to have a mandatory vaccine where they make you take a vaccine, common sense would absolutely dictate that step 3 of that will be they are going to make you receive something that will prove that you've been vaccinated. That is an absolute fundamental guarantee. That is not speculation on my part. That is an absolute fact that when they make this vaccine mandatory, and they will, The first couple of rounds will not be mandatory. They are going to see if social pressure will be enough to get people to take it. If social pressure doesn't work, then they're going to apply economic pressure. They're not going to let you fly. They're not going to let you take public transportation. They're not going to let you shop at a supermarket. And they're going to hit you with economic pressure. But if social pressure doesn't work and economic pressure doesn't work, and then they're going to apply political pressure, then the political pressure is going to be executive orders and laws passed through Congress and the Senate that will mandate that you take these things. And then when you get to that point, it's going to be enforced with the military. Now, this is the conveyor belt of the end times that we find ourselves on. We are already well down this path. Here in America, all of this activity started on March 18th of 2020, and it soon spread around the world with global lockdowns and global crashed economies. And now everybody, as we are about to enter the last month of 2020, the entire world is on the same page. America now is no different than Europe or Asia or any other place. We are all under the same mandates. Everybody's working in the same direction to accomplish the same goal. 2020 was the year where they prepared everyone, and having prepared us all, 2021 is going to be the year for execution of that plan. I'm not talking execution of people, though that's probably not far off, but 2020 was the year that they prepared and rolled out their plan. 2021 is going to be the year that they're going to execute that plan, and it's a plan from the New World Order, and it's called the Great Reset, it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it's called Build Back Better. And in closing, let me just say, now you know why Donald Trump is not going to be the president, why Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be successful. They are going to be installed on January 20th of 2021, and America is going to be placed under global supervision. And Joe Biden is the candidate that they've selected who is going to lay down and hand the keys to America over to the United Nations and the New World Order. This is happening. Donald Trump will not be our next president. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that's your next president. Build back better. That's what you're going to see in 2021. And there's no getting out of it. There's no getting around it. The only thing that you can do, that I can do, is we've got to go through it. And if I were you, I would be putting my eye towards the eastern sky and that Flight 777 on Titus 213 Airlines. And I hope that you're ready. I hope that you're saved. Because if you want to get on that flight, you got to be saved. You got to know Jesus Christ is your Savior. That's the only way you're taking that flight. Because if you're not ready, you're not going to go. And the only way that you can get ready is that you got to be born again and you got to have Jesus Christ as your Savior. And with that, we're out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for being part of this program. Lord willing, we'll see you back here Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another edition of our Rightly Dividing King James Bible Study. Have a great week, everybody.
My sins